I never expected a wedding gift to tear my family apart, but sometimes the most beautiful celebrations reveal the ugliest truths. My name is Emma, and I grew up with everything a child could want. Our home in the suburbs was straight out of an architectural magazine: vaulted ceilings, marble countertops, and a backyard pool that became the neighborhood hotspot every summer. My father, Richard, built his real estate empire from nothing, and he reminded us of this fact at every opportunity. Everything we have comes from dedication and sacrifice, Dad would lecture, his voice carrying that distinctive blend of pride and authority that made everyone in the room sit up straighter. I'd nod dutifully, though at 12 years old, I was far more interested in spending time with my cousin Ava than understanding the value of a dollar. Ava was technically my cousin, but in reality, she was more like the sister I never had, only 11 months younger than me. She lived just across town with my father's younger brother, Uncle David, and his wife, Aunt Natalie. While our families were incredibly close, the financial disparity between us was impossible to ignore. "Your uncle's family is going through a rough patch," Mom would explain whenever I noticed Dad slipping Uncle David an envelope of cash or paying for Ava's summer camp alongside mine. Family supports family. Mom was always the peacemaker, smoothing over any awkwardness when Uncle David would reluctantly accept another loan from Dad. Ava and I were inseparable throughout childhood. We shared clothes, secrets, and ambitious dreams for our futures. We'd spend countless hours in my bedroom planning out our lives, with teenage certainty. "After college, we'll get apartments in the same building," Ava would declare, sprawled across my bed as we flipped through magazines. "And when we get married, our kids will grow up together just like we did." When high school graduation approached, Dad announced he'd pay for both our college educations. I remember the moment vividly, standing in our backyard during our joint graduation party, fairy lights twinkling overhead as Dad raised his glass. "My two favorite girls deserve nothing but the best education," he proclaimed, putting his arms around both of us. Ava's eyes filled with grateful tears while I just smiled, taking his generosity for granted. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs that something wasn't quite right. The way Dad's eyes lingered on Aunt Natalie during family gatherings, how he always insisted on driving her places when Uncle David worked late, the excessive gifts he bought for Ava on ordinary occasions. But at 18, I was focused on the adventure ahead. Ava and I were heading to the same university, ready to conquer the world together. "This is going to be amazing," Ava squealed as we decorated our dorm rooms across the hall from each other. "Promise me nothing will ever come between us, Emma." "Nothing ever could," I assured her, believing it with my whole heart. How naive we were. How blind I was to the cracks forming in what I thought was our perfect family foundation. College flew by in a whirlwind of classes, internships, and weekend adventures. Before I knew it, I was walking across the stage to receive my marketing degree, my family cheering loudly from the audience. Armed with my diploma and brimming with confidence, I quickly landed an entry-level position at a digital marketing agency in the city. Everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place, except for one thing. Living costs in the city were astronomical, and I was struggling to find an affordable apartment. "Dad, I've been looking at apartments, but the market is insane right now," I mentioned during Sunday dinner at my parents' house. "If I could just get some help with the down payment, Emma," he interrupted, setting down his fork with a definitive clink against fine china. "You're a working professional now. It's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet. Your mother and I gave you an excellent education debt-free. The rest is up to you." Mom nodded in agreement, and the subject was closed. So that's how I ended up in a tiny studio apartment with questionable plumbing, watching my savings grow at a glacial pace, while half my paycheck disappeared into rent. But I was determined to prove I could make it on my own. A year later, Ava graduated with her degree in education. We celebrated at her favorite restaurant downtown, and that's when she shared her big news. "Tyler proposed," she exclaimed, extending her hand to reveal a sparkling diamond ring. "We're getting married in just 4 months. Those 4 months passed in a blur of wedding preparations. Despite my own financial struggles, I threw myself into my maid of honor duties, helping Ava select everything from her gown to the perfect centerpieces. I was genuinely happy for her until the wedding day changed everything. The ceremony was beautiful, the reception elegant. I watched Ava and Tyler share their first dance, both of them radiant with joy. Then Dad stood up to make his speech, champagne flute in hand. "Ava," he began, his voice thick with emotion, You've been like a daughter to me all these years. Watching you grow up alongside Emma has been one of my greatest joys. I smiled from my seat at the head table, sipping my champagne. Standard wedding speech stuff. But then, that's why, he continued, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. I want to give you something special to start your new life together. He paused dramatically, and the entire reception hall fell silent. The keys to your very own condominium. The champagne flute nearly slipped from my fingers as the room erupted in gasps and applause. Uncle David and Aunt Natalie were openly weeping. Ava rushed to embrace my father, sobbing thank yous into his shoulder. You deserve this, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I love you, like my own daughter. I sat frozen, forcing a smile as relatives swarmed around the newlyweds, congratulating them on their incredible gift. A gift worth at least $50,000 in our market. A gift my father had explicitly refused to help me with just months earlier. As the wedding photographer captured the moment, I couldn't help but wonder, why was my father's niece more deserving of his generosity than his own daughter? I waited exactly 3 days after the wedding before I showed up at my parents' doorstep. My hands were trembling as I rang the bell, but my voice was steady when Dad opened the door. We need to talk, I said, walking past him into the familiar living room where so many family celebrations had taken place. What's on your mind, Emma? He settled into his leather armchair, looking perfectly calm, as if he hadn't just upended my understanding of our family dynamics. Really? You're going to pretend you don't know? I remained standing, too agitated to sit. You told me to stand on my own feet, but you just handed Ava a condominium worth tens of thousands of dollars. Care to explain that, Dad? Dad sighed like I was being unreasonable. It's different with Ava. She doesn't have the same opportunities you do. Different how? We went to the same university, got the same education, which you paid for, by the way, and I'm grateful for that. But a condominium? She comes from a less privileged background, Emma. Tyler's family isn't well off either. Your uncle can't afford to help them get started in life. He leaned forward, his tone patronizing. In today's housing market, they'd never be able to save enough for their own place. I let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Oh, and I can. Half the country rents, Dad. They could have done what I'm doing, work, save, and rent an apartment like normal people. You're being petty, he snapped, his calm facade cracking. This isn't about you. This is my money, and I decide how to spend it. I help your uncle's family because they need it. Petty? My voice rose. This isn't about money. It's about fairness. How do you think it feels to watch you treat your niece better than your own daughter? That's enough. Mom burst into the room. I hadn't even realized she was home. How dare you question your father's decisions? You have no right to tell him how to spend his money. Oh, so you're okay with this? I turned to her, hurt building in my chest. Your husband giving another woman's daughter a condominium while telling his own to struggle? Don't you take that tone with me, young lady. Mom's face flushed with anger. Your father has provided everything for you, and this is how you repay him? With jealousy and demands? Jealousy? I was practically shouting now. You think this is about jealousy? This is about respect, about treating your own child with the same consideration you show to others. Get out. Dad's voice was cold, cutting through the tension. Until you can appreciate everything we've done for you and apologize for this behavior, get out of my house. Gladly, I grabbed my purse. And don't worry about doing anything else for me. I wouldn't want your charity. My eyes burned with angry tears as I got into my car. It wasn't about the money, it never had been. It was about the double standard, about watching my father bend over backward for Ava while telling me to toughen up. 5 years can change a lot of things. In my case, they changed almost everything. I built my career methodically, rising through the ranks at my marketing firm to become a senior account manager. I saved diligently, though nowhere near enough for a down payment in our ridiculous housing market. Most importantly, I found Jordan. He walked into my life during a client meeting. He was the creative director we were partnering with on a campaign, and something just clicked between us. When he proposed on a random Tuesday evening while we were cooking dinner together, I knew I'd finally found someone who truly put me first. Our wedding planning started immediately. The date was set for early summer, and I threw myself into preparations with the same determination I brought to everything else. The venue was secured. The dress chosen, then came the hardest part, the guest list. I spent hours at my kitchen table staring at names and relationships. though it wasn't difficult to decide who wouldn't be on it. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Ava in 5 years. Not since Ava's nasty message on Facebook. You're just jealous because I have a husband and a condominium while you have neither. Grow up, Emma. And maybe if you weren't so entitled, you'd have both by now. I guess some people just can't handle seeing others succeed. I blocked her after that. It was easier that way, cleaner. I built a new life, surrounded myself with people who valued me, and tried to forget about the family that had made me feel like a second-class daughter. But word travels fast in families, even broken ones. I was sitting in our apartment reviewing floral arrangements when my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen, the first time in 5 years. My heart jumped into my throat, and my hand shook as I answered. Emma. His voice sounded older somehow, more tired. I hear congratulations are in order. Who told you? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Does it matter? Why didn't you invite me to your wedding? He paused, and I could hear the hurt in his voice. I'm your father. I should be the one walking you down the aisle. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Really? Now you want to play the father card? Emma, actually, I'm curious. I cut him off, feeling reckless. Something about hearing his voice had unleashed all the emotions I'd kept carefully contained for 5 years. Will you be giving me a condominium as a wedding gift? You know, like you did for Ava? The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, he cleared his throat. Look, sweetheart, business hasn't been great lately. I can give you $5,000 for the wedding. That's a generous gift, you should be grateful. $5,000 after giving Ava a whole condominium? I felt that old familiar burn of indignation rising. Some things, it seemed, never changed. Thanks for your generosity, Dad, but keep your money. I don't need it. The line went dead before he could respond. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling slightly, wondering if that 5-year silence had been better than this painful reminder of why I'd cut contact in the first place. The notification popped up on my phone the next morning. Richard Parker has shared a post. My father rarely posted on social media, so seeing his name alone made my stomach clench. When I opened it, my hands started shaking uncontrollably. I never thought I'd have to write something like this about my own daughter, the post began. But Emma has shown her true colors. She's demanding a condominium as a wedding gift, threatening not to invite me to her wedding unless I comply. The selfishness and mercenary attitude she's displaying breaks my heart. What happened to the daughter I raised? The comments started rolling in immediately. Aunt Margaret, how ungrateful can she be? Cousin Ethan, some people never appreciate what they have. Even people I barely knew were weighing in. You can't demand gifts like that. What kind of daughter blackmails her own father? My fingers flew across the keyboard before I could stop myself. A matter of principle, you gave my cousin an apartment for her wedding. Your own daughter deserves the same consideration, or at least an explanation for the difference in treatment. But the comments kept coming, each one more judgmental than the last. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type, but something had snapped inside me. I opened a new post and started writing. Let me tell you all a story that's been bothering me for years, I began. It's about a father who has always treated his niece better than his own daughter. Let me list the ways. Every birthday, Ava got lavish parties while mine were simple family gatherings. When we went on family trips abroad, Dad always took Ava shopping separately, buying her extras I never got. Her allowance was consistently double mine. Dad paid for her education, which I appreciate he did for both of us. He gave her a condominium as a wedding gift while telling me to stand on my own feet. At Ava's wedding, she had her first dance with my father instead of her own. And you know what? The more I think about it, the more suspicious this whole situation seems. I wouldn't even be surprised if it turned out Ava was actually my father's daughter. I hit post before I could second-guess myself. The words stared back at me from the screen. A nuclear bomb dropped into the middle of our family's carefully maintained facade. There would be no taking it back now. The aftermath of my post was exactly as explosive as you might expect. Within hours, my phone was blowing up with calls and messages from every relative I'd ever met. Some family members immediately announced they wouldn't be attending my wedding. Mom called first, her voice shrill with anger. How could you? Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? Your father is devastated. We raised you better than this. Dad's call came next, a stream of rage and accusations about how I was destroying the family name. You're dead to me, he spat before hanging up. Aunt Natalie's call was particularly venomous. You vindictive little, she hissed. How dare you suggest you're just jealous of my daughter's happiness? Then came Ava's message. Congratulations on proving what a hysterical, paranoid person you've become. I feel sorry for your fiancé. He's marrying a delusional woman who invents 6 stories about her own family because she can't handle not being the center of attention. Don't worry about blocking me, I'll do it myself. I quietly blocked everyone who'd left nasty comments or messages. My wedding guest list got significantly shorter, but I told myself it was for the best. Only Uncle David remained silent throughout the whole ordeal, which I found oddly comforting amid the chaos. The next 2 months were a blur of wedding preparations. Jordan was my rock through it all, never questioning my decision to cut off my family, supporting me as I revised seating charts and canceled plate settings. Then one rainy evening, there was a knock at my door. Uncle David stood there looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. "We need to talk." I'd never seen my uncle look so broken. He sat heavily on my couch, hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles were white. "Your post," he began, "about your father's treatment of Ava. It made me start really thinking about everything and remembering. He told me about the early years of his marriage, how my father was always around their house. He'd drive Natalie home from work, saying it wasn't safe for her to take the bus. This was even before she was pregnant with Ava. He was always bringing her gifts, expensive ones. I thought, God, I was such a fool. I thought he was just being a generous brother. Uncle David's voice cracked. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope with trembling hands. "I had to know. After your post, I just had to know." The DNA test results were printed on official laboratory letterhead. My uncle had collected hair samples from all 3 of them, himself, Ava, my father, and himself. The results were unequivocal. Uncle David's genetic match to Ava showed only an uncle's relationship 25%, while my father showed a 99.99% paternal match. "Natalie confessed everything today," he whispered. 20 years. They've been having an affair for 20 years, since before Ava was even conceived. We sat there until well past midnight, piecing together memories that suddenly made horrifying sense: the special treatment, the excessive gifts, the way my father always seemed to know about Ava's life before anyone else. All those times he'd insisted on driving Aunt Natalie to doctor appointments when she was pregnant. "I'm so sorry, Emma," Uncle David said as he was leaving. "I should have seen it. Should have known." I watched him walk to his car in the rain, his shoulders hunched with the weight of 2 decades of betrayal. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt no satisfaction in being right. The morning after Uncle David's visit changed everything. I was still processing our conversation when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Emma, we need to talk. Can you meet me at Maple Cafe in an hour?" I found her already there, sitting in a corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept. Her hands were wrapped around an untouched cup of coffee, and I noticed they were shaking slightly. "I filed for divorce," she said before I could even sit down. "I just came from the lawyer's office." Her voice cracked. 23 years of marriage, and I never knew, never wanted to know, maybe. Uncle David had told her everything: the DNA test results, Aunt Natalie's confession, the decades-long affair. He'd filed for divorce too, unable to stay married to a woman who'd lived such a profound lie. "Emma," Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hands, her eyes brimming with tears. "I owe you the biggest apology. All these years I defended him. I sided with him. I watched him favor Ava and told myself it was nothing. I should have listened to you, should have seen what was happening in my own home." "Mom, no, let me finish," she insisted. "When you posted about your suspicions, I was so angry. I thought you were trying to hurt us, trying to get revenge. But you were the only one brave enough to say what we all should have seen. We spent hours in that cafe crying, talking, beginning the slow process of healing. Mom ordered a bottle of wine, and we shared it as she told me about all the signs she'd ignored over the years, all the moments that suddenly made terrible sense. Later that evening, I was at home trying to process everything that had happened when someone started pounding on my door. I opened it to find Dad standing there, his face purple with rage. "Are you happy now?" he shouted, pushing past me into my apartment. "You destroyed everything. 2 families destroyed because you couldn't keep your mouth shut." "I destroyed nothing," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice was. "You did this 20 years ago. You made a choice. that would destroy these families. I just exposed the truth. Truth, his face twisted in anger. Well, I won't be at your wedding. How's that for truth? I wasn't planning to invite you, I said quietly. You haven't been a real father to me in years. Then it's settled, he snarled. You're no longer my daughter. A strange calm settled over me. That's fine, I smiled sadly. You have another daughter anyway, don't you? The look of shock on his face was almost comical. Before he could respond, I opened the door and gestured for him to leave. When he did, I closed it firmly behind him, leaving him standing in the hallway. That evening, I called Uncle David. My hands were trembling slightly as I dialed his number. Uncle David, I have something to ask you. I took a deep breath. Would you walk me down the aisle at my wedding? There was a long pause, and I heard him clear his throat several times before he could speak. Emma, I would be honored. The following weeks brought unexpected revelations and connections. Mom and I began meeting regularly for lunch, rebuilding our relationship brick by brick. She'd moved out of the family home into a small but charming apartment and was starting to rediscover who she was without Dad. I've spent so many years being Richard's wife that I forgot how to be my own person, she confessed during one of our lunches. It's terrifying, but also exhilarating. Uncle David was going through something similar, staying with his brother across town while he figured out his next steps. He and Mom started meeting for coffee occasionally, finding solace in their shared experience of betrayal. Meanwhile, I was thrown into final wedding preparations. Jordan had been incredible throughout the entire ordeal, offering steady support without judgment. This doesn't change anything about us, he'd assured me, holding me close one night as I cried. If anything, it makes me more certain I want to spend my life with someone as strong as you. The divorce proceedings between my parents moved surprisingly quickly. Dad agreed to everything, perhaps hoping to minimize the scandal. They settled out of court, and Mom received a $200,000 settlement. I was in our apartment, surrounded by wedding thank you cards I was writing, when Mom came to visit one afternoon. I want you to have this, she said, sliding an envelope across my coffee table. Inside was a check for the full settlement amount. Mom, I don't need this money. What I need is for my daughter to have the home she deserves. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Consider it compensation for all the years I failed to stand up for you. You didn't fail. I did. But we're fixing things now, she smiled. Besides, what better way to use his money than to finally give you what he should have given you years ago? I won't pretend I didn't cry when I deposited that check, or when Jordan and I found the perfect condo, a beautiful 2-bedroom with a balcony and enough space to start the family we hoped for. Every time I unlock our front door, I feel a sense of justice being served. The wedding day arrived with perfect spring weather. The garden venue was beautiful, scattered with white roses and peonies. Mom sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. When Uncle David took my arm to walk me down the aisle, I saw tears in his eyes too. You look radiant, he whispered as we started our walk. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. As I approached Jordan waiting at the altar, I caught sight of our small but meaningful guest list people who had chosen truth over comfortable lies, who had stood by me when it would have been easier to look the other way. This wasn't the wedding I'd pictured as a young girl, but standing there exchanging vows with Jordan, surrounded by people who truly loved us, I realized it was exactly the wedding I needed. Our foundation wouldn't be built on secrets and favoritism, but on honesty and equal love. Dad and Aunt Natalie wasted no time moving forward with their relationship. They got married just 6 months after the divorces were finalized. I heard about it through family gossip, apparently. They didn't even wait for the ink to dry on their respective divorce papers. They're not hiding their relationship anymore. Their social media is filled with happy couple photos, exotic vacations, and public displays of affection, as if the past 20 years of deception never happened. I don't follow their accounts. I don't need to. Most of our relatives sided with Mom and Uncle David once the DNA results became public knowledge. Even those who initially defended Dad couldn't ignore the evidence. A few family members tried to remain neutral, claiming it wasn't their business to judge. But family gatherings have permanently split into 2 camps. Uncle David comes over for dinner every Sunday now. He's dating again, tentatively stepping back into life after the betrayal. Mom joins us often, and watching them heal together, former in-laws bonded by shared pain, has been beautiful in the midst of so much ugliness. Sometimes late at night, I think about Ava, about the fact that she's technically my half-sister. I wonder if she knew, if she ever suspected the truth behind our father's favoritism. According to Uncle David, she was devastated by the revelation. She and Tyler moved across the country shortly after the DNA test results became public, cutting contact with everyone except Dad and Aunt Natalie. I can't help but feel sorry for her in some ways. She didn't ask to be born into this web of lies. For 28 years, she believed one man was her father, only to discover her entire identity was built on deception. The condominium, the very gift that sparked this whole revelation, was put up for sale. I heard they couldn't bear to live in it anymore, knowing how it came to be theirs. 6 months after our wedding, Jordan and I were settling into our new routine when I received an unexpected email. The subject line simply read, "I'm sorry." It was from Ava. "I don't know how to begin this message," she wrote. "I've started and deleted it 100 times. First, I want to say I'm sorry for the horrible things I said to you. You didn't deserve that. I was defending what I thought was my family, but I was wrong in how I treated you." She explained that she and Tyler had been in therapy, trying to process everything that had happened. "I didn't know Emma. I swear I didn't know he was my biological father. But looking back, there were so many signs I should have questioned. The special treatment, the excessive attention, all of it makes terrible sense now." She ended the email with a request. "I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking to re-enter your life, but I wanted you to know that I see the truth now, and I'm sorry for my part in your pain. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I read the email multiple times, unsure how to respond. Jordan found me still staring at my screen an hour later. "What do you think I should do?" I asked him. "What do you want to do?" He countered gently. That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Part of me wanted to delete the email and continue building my new life without any connection to the past. Another part recognized that Ava was as much a victim of our father's deception as any of us, perhaps even more so. After days of consideration, I replied with a simple message. "Thank you for reaching out. I need time, but maybe someday we can talk." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was an acknowledgement, a tiny crack in the wall I'd built to protect myself. Meanwhile, life moved forward in unexpected ways. Mom threw herself into volunteer work, finding purpose in helping domestic violence survivors. "I wasn't physically abused," she explained, "but 20 years of lies is its own kind of violence." Uncle David started his own small business, something he'd always wanted to do but had never found the courage for while married to Aunt Natalie. He seemed lighter somehow despite everything he'd been through. Jordan and I were thriving in our careers. My marketing agency promoted me to lead a new digital division, while Jordan's creative work started winning industry awards. Our home became the gathering place for holidays and celebrations, the family hub that my parents' house had once been, but built on honest foundations. A year after the wedding, we decided to start trying for a baby. I was both excited and terrified by the prospect of becoming a parent. What if I don't know how to be a good mother? I confessed to Jordan one night. "My family role models aren't exactly stellar. You know exactly what not to do," he pointed out, pulling me close. "Sometimes that's the most valuable knowledge." 3 months later, the pregnancy test showed positive. As I stared at those 2 pink lines, I made a silent promise to our child. "You will always know you are loved equally and completely. You will never question your place in our hearts." When we announced the pregnancy to Mom and Uncle David over Sunday dinner, they both broke into tears. "This is what family should be," Mom said, raising her glass of sparkling water in a toast. "New beginnings, clean slates, love without conditions." Uncle David nodded, adding quietly, "And truth, always truth, no matter how difficult." I placed my hand on my still flat stomach, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The past couldn't be changed, but our future was still unwritten. The baby would be born into a complicated family history, but also into a home where the mistakes of the past served as lessons for the future, where favoritism and secrets had no place, where love meant honesty, even when it hurt. As spring turned to summer, I received another email from Ava. She'd heard about the pregnancy through family channels and sent her congratulations. At the end, she added a question. "Would it be okay if I sent a small gift for the baby when they arrive? No pressure at all, if you're not comfortable with that." I sat with the question for a few days before responding. "That would be nice. Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness, not entirely, but it was a step toward something new, not the close bond we'd once shared, but perhaps something honest instead, something real. Our daughter Lily came into the world on a crisp autumn morning, her cries filling the delivery room with the promise of new beginnings. As Jordan placed her in my arms for the first time, I was overwhelmed by a fierce protectiveness I'd never experienced before. "Hello, little one," I whispered, studying her perfect face. "You will never doubt that you are loved exactly as you are." The first few weeks of parenthood were a beautiful blur of sleepless nights and indescribable joy. Our home transformed, overnight baby gear taking over every corner, the rhythm of our days dictated by feedings and diaper changes. Mom practically moved in for the first 2 weeks, cooking meals and teaching us first-time parent tricks with patient hands. "You're a natural," she assured me one evening as I rocked Lily to sleep. "Much better than I was with you." "I doubt that," I said, but her words touched me deeply. Uncle David became the most devoted honorary grandfather imaginable, showing up every weekend with tiny outfits and educational toys. "Is 4 months too early for baby swim lessons?" he'd ask earnestly, already researching the best instructors in town. 2 days after we brought Lily home, a package arrived from across the country. Inside was a beautiful handcrafted mobile with delicate paper birds suspended on invisible threads. The card simply read, "For Lily, with love, Ava." I hung it above the changing table, watching as Lily's eyes tracked the gentle movement of the birds. It felt like an olive branch, floating above our daughter's head. When Lily was 3 months old, I received another email from Ava. "Tyler and I will be in town next month for a friend's wedding. I completely understand if it's too much, but if you're open to it, I'd love to meet Lily. Just a short visit on your terms. No pressure at all." I showed the message to Jordan, who squeezed my shoulder supportively. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." That night, I called Mom for advice. "What are you afraid of?" she asked gently after I explained the situation. "I don't know," I admitted. "That it'll be awkward? That seeing her will bring back all the pain? That Lily will somehow be affected by all this family drama?" Mom was quiet for a moment. "Lily will eventually learn about all of this, Emma. She'll learn that families are complicated, that adults make terrible mistakes, that the truth matters. But she could also learn that forgiveness is possible, that healing can happen, that people can change." "Do you think people can really change?" I asked story 2. "You think you can give birth before your sister?" Mom asked icily as she entered my baby shower. "Never. Hers is the only genuine grandchild." My sister sipped her wine and grinned as she raised her foot toward my stomach, and I curled up in agony. "This family doesn't need an unwanted child, does it?" Then, from behind, a low voice said. Their faces became white. I should have been at my happiest right now. I work at a prominent advertising firm as the director of marketing, residing in an Upper East Side apartment with a view of Manhattan. James, an executive at an IT startup, and I are in our 2nd year of marriage. I am now pregnant with our much-awaited first child. My doctor has given me a clear bill of health, and I am 7 months pregnant. James and I went to Bergdorf Goodman's baby department last weekend and purchased a little Chanel cardigan. "Our child will grow up to be as kind and lovely as you are, Emily." "Oh," he said. I started crying at what he said. After breakfast at Sarah Beth's in the morning, I take afternoon strolls around Central Park. Living in the city is like being in a movie, particularly now that my morning sickness has subsided. Even if I've been having calm days, there's a dark side to all of this delight. It's Diana Spencer, my mom. Mother is the wife of real estate magnate Charles Spencer, and she leads a beautiful life in New York's elite society. Hampton's summertime, stays in Aspen for the winter. She never fails to attend a charity function. With a vintage Hermes scarf around her neck, her sophisticated beauty continues to turn heads in social circles. She is the epitome of the social queen, arriving in a Bentley. Karen, my sister, is a successful model who is currently engaged to a well-known actor. Karen is the ideal daughter to a mother. With the type of brilliance that befits the Spencer name, she is the focus of attention. Images of her on luxury boat vacations, Grace's monthly publications, and her steadily expanding social media following. My parents were divorced 20 years ago. I haven't spoken to my father since. "Forget about that man," Mom insisted, blocking all of his texts and correspondence. Birthday and Christmas cards were most likely thrown away without ever being opened. When I became pregnant, everything changed. Karen and Mother's demeanor abruptly became icy. Mother said, "My true grandchild will be Karen's child." after her fiancé abruptly proclaimed his wish to have children. She made her announcement while fiddling with an antique ring in the reception area, which was decorated with family photographs. Mother frowned when she saw my belly when we first met on Madison Avenue. "You always let me down," she remarked. Like ice, her words sliced through the quiet of the upscale store. "I'm throwing a baby shower at the Plaza Hotel next week. 30 visitors. It ought to be a season of abundant benefits. A gender reveal cake has been specifically purchased, and the third-floor grand ballroom is already set up with champagne and mocktails. Messages of blessing from beloved guests will soon fill the baby book." However, there was something sinister about Mother and Karen's RSVP. Written on pricey stationery, their answers appeared to be riddled with pitfalls. "I'll come, of course. After all, it's a significant location." I shivered a little when I heard Mother's comments because I remembered her icy stare and the calculating smile she wears at family dinners following Sunday services. I hesitate every time I compose a holiday greeting card. Whenever I'm considering what to write to my mother, my chest gets constricted. What has caused the family's approval of this pregnancy to become so skewed? The grand ballroom, located on the third story of the Plaza Hotel, was flooded with morning light. Soft light and decorations, in gradients of pink and blue, are cast by crystal chandeliers. Give the room a gentle hug. Floral baby shoes were set out like fairy presents, and the tables were draped with pure white linens. The silk wall decorations were adorned with pearls that shone brilliantly. "The location looks fantastic, Emily." My college buddy Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. We had just completed the VIP room's last preparations. Through the window, the green of Central Park appeared to be commemorating the momentous occasion. "Thank you." Sarah, however, detected my hesitation and gave me a gentle nod. "Don't be concerned about your mom. We are available to you." Last night she remained on the phone with me, listening to my worries about Karen and Mother, odd behavior, the last several months' happenings, and my nebulous fears. My heart felt a little lighter after sharing everything. Slowly, guests started to come. My coworkers, James's parents, and well-known members of New York's upper class. They provided mocktails and champagne. The gender reveal cake was surrounded by a welcoming ambiance. The opening of the gifts started. Dior's first shoes, a Burberry check bedspread, and a little pair of Chanel baby shoes. Every present was priceless and well considered. How cute. Oh, this is a Paris-made limited edition. With every gift unwrapped, the cashmere baby blanket appears really cozy. The room reverberated with blessings. Heartfelt notes were pouring into the baby book. Tears filled James's mother's eyes as she wrote the beginning of a lovely family. My coworkers were reminiscing about their time at work. Everyone grinned, particularly while discussing our new project success. In the middle of this cozy environment, spending time with them has been really supportive. My phone began to vibrate. A call from an unidentified number. "I'll keep you safe." There was no sender's name, I assure you. However, this writing style made me think of the letter I discovered when I was 16. The mood of the room abruptly altered before I could gather my thoughts. "I apologize, Emily, for keeping you waiting." Mother had come sooner than expected, so I turned to locate her. She lacked the social elegance she usually possessed. Rather, enveloped in a frigid air, her Chanel suit was well-fitting, her Hermes scarf properly knotted, yet there was an intensity of hatred in her eyes that I had never seen before. And standing next to her was Corinne, my sister, who was grinning defiantly and already clutching a wine glass. She appeared to have walked out of a fashion magazine, thanks to her well-matched ensemble and high-end labels. But there was a bitter shade on her face. "Why so early?" My inquiry went unanswered by Mother. She walked slowly toward me and gave me a cold look. Every stride she took seemed to strangle my heart as her shoes clicked on the marble floor. "What are you doing?" Mother's words reverberated around the quiet room. The visitors ceased talking. Glasses and champagne holding hands froze. "What are you saying? Don't act as though you're ignorant." The voice of Mother increased abruptly. "It is improper for you to have a kid first." James attempted to go to my side, just as my mother's irate yell could be heard. The crystals in the chandelier shook at the intensity of her voice. "You cannot have a child before your sister, in my opinion. Karen's child will be my real grandchild." It like a bad dream. I reflexively curled up to shield myself, and Mother's Jimmy Choo heel rose toward my tummy. My ears were penetrated by Karen's high-pitched laughing. A glass was dropped, and the visitors let out screams. Our family doesn't need any more kids. There was a bitter delight in Karen's voice as she tilted her wine glass, as though she were taking in a performance. In that instant, everything appeared to halt. You've finally shown your genuine nature, Diana. From behind came a powerful, deep voice. A voice that has been unquestionably present for 20 years. That voice, which Mother and Karen hadn't heard in 20 years, but which had always reverberated in my heart, caused the color to drain from their faces. In a flash, Mother's flawless makeup went pallid. The voice of Father Karen faltered. Crimson drips stained the immaculate white carpet when the wine glass fell out of her grasp. The room's air froze. As though time had frozen, the chandelier light swung softly. Holding their breath, everyone watched to see what would happen. James drew me in, all set to dial security. I shuddered a little in his embrace. In startled stillness, the invited visitors watched. This sudden change left even the social elite stunned. Only the sound of Father's footsteps could be heard clearly over all of this. Mother's strained countenance broke like broken china. The instant she spotted Father. Beneath her flawless makeup, fear soaked through. Karen stood still, gazing at the shards of shattered wine glass on the ground. As though signifying this moment, the rich crimson wine spilled over the immaculate white carpet. I'll make a security call. I held James's arm gently while he grabbed for his phone. Anger and protectiveness were blended together in his gaze. Hold on. My eyes filled with tears. However, these weren't tears of grief or terror. After 20 years of waiting, the day had finally come. Those tears were softly lighted by the chandelier light. Father moved slowly across the arena. He didn't go quickly, but he was determined with every stride. As though time had frozen, he appeared just as I remembered him in his blue suit. 20 years left a mark of profound love and knowledge. Emily. My father called my name. 20 years worth of emotions were in his voice. I stumbled a little as I walked away from James and approached my father. My head was filled with memories. A day in the summer when I was 16. Mother, I stumbled upon a letter. Research. In the back of an old desk drawer was a hefty envelope. To my dear daughter. This letter won't reach you on May honest, since my mother most likely took away all of my correspondence. But I'll keep writing in the hopes that you will eventually read it. Since then, every month, without fail, I have surreptitiously looked for letters concealed in Mother's study, sometimes in the middle of night, sometimes slipping in while Mom was gone. I kept the letters I discovered in my treasure box with care. On the day you graduate from high school, I'm constantly keeping an eye on you. You raised your gaze to the sky above that one. I was also observing you. That blue dress was a great fit for you. The award ceremony at your university was fantastic. It was not possible for me to be in the front row. Still, even from the back of the auditorium, your beautiful smile was evident. You made a powerful speech. You obtained a job at an advertising firm, I heard. Making a decision like that is exactly like you. A location where you may apply your intelligence and inventiveness. You have my admiration. On the day of your first presentation, you must have been anxious, but I have no doubt that you produced outstanding results. The PO was on the letter's box address, but I was unable to respond. Mom is vigilant. I would not permit it. She followed me around practically every day. 2 months ago, that changed. I eventually emailed Father because I was afraid of Karen's and Mother's strange conduct. I recall that when I hit the submit button, my finger shook. Since I was 16, Dad, I have been reading your letters every month. I need your assistance now. I wish to keep this youngster safe. Hours later, the response was received. When I heard the late-night warning, my heart soared. I'll be present. Let me do it. I will never abandon you again. And my father just responded with a single sentence when I told him about the baby showers, the date, and the place. I swear, Emily, I won't allow anybody to harm you in the future. Emily, on over here. I was pulled back to reality by my father's voice. Mother yelled at the moment. The beauty that had once graced her voice was gone. There are no rights for you. Where have you been over the past 20 years? Father's voice was calm and full of conviction when he responded. Rights? Yes, I have rights. The authority to keep my daughter safe. Now, to keep my grandchild safe. James was standing next to me. I felt so brave to be with him. Emily must have you as her father. Indeed. For 20 years, a father has been thinking about his daughter every day. The two males shook hands firmly. I realized then that this was my real family. As Mother attempted to speak again, this spot was engulfed by warm ties. The doors to the arena opened. The massive doors slowly but definitely opened. "Escort these folks out, please." James spoke with a tone of respectable authority. "I'll notify the police about this intended damage to an unborn kid. Every security camera clip has been saved." As security escorted them away, Mother and Karen turned around. Mother's flawless makeup had fallen off, exposing her actual self. "Emily." "Are you Spencer?" "No," for the first time I said firmly. "I am the daughter of my father, and I will be the mother of this kid." Father put a kind touch on my shoulder as we watched Mother and Karen being led away by security. 20 years of loneliness appeared to be filled by the warmth of that hand. "We must discuss the reality of 2 decades ago. You are entitled to all information." Everyone said nice things as they left, but the visitors had already started to leave. Every blessing appeared to commemorate the start of a new family. "I'm very happy that you and your father are back together. What a beautiful father-daughter relationship. This is the essence of a true family. This marks the start of genuine bliss. Welcome back." "Respected sir." Sarah stayed to assist with cleanup until the very end. Her eyes also glistened with tears of excitement. "Emily, it was a nice yet challenging day. This was destined to happen." She took me in her arms and held me tenderly. I gave a little nod. We were facing each other in the VIP room. Outside the window, Father James and I. Dusk was starting to tint the skyscrapers of Manhattan. It was as though the orange-tinted sky was commemorating the start of a new family. Father started talking gently. His face combines the vigor that had triumphed over them 2 decades prior with the weight of years. Mother's strategic plan was the beginning of it all. I have to tell you the truth. I inhaled deeply. At last, I was able to uncover the truth about that day that my mother had concealed. I was going to fill the void inside of me. Manhattan's night lights started to dazzle in the VIP suite on the top floor of the Plaza Hotel, which was outside the window. We were facing one another. Slowly, Father James and I took up a tumbler of scotch. The weight of the revelation he was about to reveal was conveyed by his gesture. My business was going through a significant transition 20 years ago. Silently, Father's voice permeated the room. However, it was undoubtedly a period when the it bubble burst, and many businesses were having difficulties. However, my business was starting to expand. At last, our new company strategy was starting to pay off. James gave a sympathetic nod. As someone who works in the business sector, around that time, he realized what it meant. Mother got to know the real estate magnate Charles Spencer. The first initially believed that our meeting at a charity gathering was purely coincidental. Father looked slowly at his tumbler of amber drink. It was no accident, though. It was all a part of a strategy that Mom had carefully thought out. Actually, I caught my breath. Mother had been collecting information about the Spencer family, Charles Spencer's inclinations, habits, and even his assets for 6 months prior to then. My heart froze at what my father said. Mother's alteration was the first indication. Suddenly, she developed an obsession with specific charity functions. I found out later that Charles Spencer was engaged in all of those occurrences. James gave my hand a little squeeze. The second stage of Mother's strategy then began, creating false evidence against me. Father took an old, yellowed envelope that had withstood 20 years out of his pocket. Copies of Mother's diary from that era are these. Every strategy is meticulously documented. I was shaking when I got the mail. Mother's painstaking handwriting, detailing frightfully intricate ideas, was on the paper inside. Cold computations served as the basis for each item. The turning point occurred while I was in Seattle on a work trip. The sound of Father's words reverberated. Mother took advantage of that chance to modify hotel charges, falsify phone records from trips, and create images that suggested a connection with a young secretary. Everything was ready. Why, though, go so far? To my query, Father let out a long sigh, a fixation with living a more affluent existence. Although my business was expanding at the time, Charles Spencer's fortune was still unmatched by our assets. James posed the question sternly. Did you not have the opportunity to defend yourself? None, said Dad sternly. By the time I got back, it was all over. Mother had already told friends and neighbors that I had cheated on them. The reputation of the business was beginning to suffer. So, Dad, indeed, to keep you safe, I had to retreat. Father got to his feet and went to the window. His back was lit by the night view of Manhattan. However, I never gave up. I continued to write letters every month in the hopes that the truth would eventually be revealed. Why did my mother continue to conceal my letters? To keep her new life safe? Charles Spencer and her marriage, her social standing. She was afraid of losing everything. The facts shocked me. It wasn't until now that I realized. Was Karen aware? Father shook his head slowly. No. However, she grew up in her mother's perverted affection, always treated with special consideration, spoiled. Her actions today were a result of that. James's voice was determined. I've already told the police about this. Attempted injury to a fetus. Everything was captured by the serene security cameras. Dad gave a nod. Indeed. And the final verdict will be this. He reached into his pocket and took out another envelope. This demonstrates the mother's connection to Charles Spencer. Everything from 2 decades ago, including documents pertaining to illicit money transfers. My phone rang with a local news alert at that very moment. Following his wife's misconduct revelations, real estate tycoon Charles Spencer will hold an urgent press conference. Silently, Father went on. All the evidence has already been sent to Charles Spencer. The last trigger was the danger to you. An ambulance siren blared outside the window. The hustle and bustle of the metropolis appeared to portend a fresh start. There was a full moon in the night sky. Emily. My father softly called my name. Now everything is fine. From now on, let's stroll as a true family. I glanced at Father and James. There was true love. On a Sunday morning, a year later, sunshine poured into our Upper East Side house. We got a great view of Spring and Central Park through the wide windows in the living area. The soft light glistened on the new green trees. Grace is grinning. I looked at my daughter, who was 6 months old, in my arms. Her eyes were filled with pure excitement. My cheek was stroked by her little hand. Is brunch ready for Sunday? Father, wearing an apron, peered out of the kitchen. He was now preparing French toast. The room was filled with sweet scents. Almost, James said while he was making coffee. We have grown into a true family over the past year. We have breakfast together every Sunday morning. We've been dining at home more lately, while we still occasionally go to Sarah Beth's. Father's home cooking is something that everyone looks forward to. Did you see the newspaper, Emily? The newspaper was laid out on the table by Father. There were pictures of my sister, a former social queen who now lives in a modest town apartment, and my former mother. After her divorce from Charles Spencer was finalized, and she lost all of her possessions, the story described the mother's present circumstances. Her life took a significant turn. Days spent away from her old house in a little apartment. Karen lives with her 2 children. I read the piece in silence. My sister is currently employed as a clerk at a nearby boutique after losing all of her modeling contracts. When she and her actor fiancé split up, her fan base on social media fell apart. Her opulent way of living was no longer there. They appeared to feel remorse for everything. Mother talked through tears throughout the piece. I lost everything because of a mistake I made 20 years ago. My beloved family was shattered by my greed. In addition, my sister acknowledged having a change of heart. I was distorted by Mother's overindulgent affection. I still feel bad about how I handled my sister. I'm at last starting to realize what family really means. Enough about the newspaper. I got up and held Grace. Dwelling on the past is unnecessary. The enjoyment of the now is what counts. Emily James touched my shoulder with his hand. You made the proper choice. I gave his comments a little nod. I'm happy I decided to make all the changes on the living room shelf that day during the baby shower. Father's letters have been maintained with care. 20 years worth of emotions in a bundle of letters. New family pictures are currently being added. One by one. Grace's grin, reunion with the father, joyful times spent with James, beyond the window. The crisp green leaves rustled in the spring air. Yes, exactly. As he plated French breakfast, Dad suggested that we visit the Hampton house the next weekend. I want to make new memories with my family. What about gracefully playing by the sea? That sounds fantastic. Naturally, I grinned. The table was arranged with hot meals. Bacon, scrambled eggs, French toast, and Dad's unique blueberry sauce. Come on, let's eat. Grace giggled joyfully as the 3 of us talked in unison. Her smile in the early morning light was priceless. When the doorbell rang, Sarah came. She had started attending our Sunday brunches every week. My goodness, The French toast for today looks so good. She had also grown to be a vital part of our family. The spring sunlight shone stronger outside the window, as though a new season was about to begin. I was genuinely delighted at the time. Grace's grin, James's encouragement, Father's love, and the innumerable memories we would make going forward. This is the appearance of a true family. Father's voice was stern yet low. Together, let's continue on this journey, I responded, putting my everything into my response. Of course, Dad. Grace's eyes lit up with another smile. The picture frame beside the window appeared to represent the bright future of our family. The soft light fell over Father's old letters. As enduring evidence of the father-daughter relationship, they continued to look over us even after 20 years had passed. Story 3. Mom moved my sister and her children into my room and offered me a closet, but I paid all the family expenditures. She is now calling to remind me about the money after I left. She was astonished by my response. I've always been the one that takes responsibility, is realistic, and considers all options. I'm Chloe, and I've been leading what most people would consider a successful life for the last 5 years. Excellent work in a nearby state. The firm offered housing and sufficient revenue to support others. However, pleasure is not necessarily correlated with achievement, particularly when family is involved. I grew up witnessing my parents offer love and care to my older sister, Sarah. She was their ideal firstborn kid and their golden child, incapable of doing anything wrong. Sarah got by on charm and our parents' unending indulgence, while I worked hard in school and made plans for the future. I adored my sister, don't get me wrong, but I was always aware of my place in the family. I drive back home to see my folks every other weekend. It has turned into a habit for the previous 5 years. On Friday, after work, one go to their place and get some considerate presents from the stores around my flat. I occasionally question why I continue, but then I think of the one wedding loan that changed everything. Sarah said 7 years ago that she was marrying a wealthy man she had been seeing. I indicated she wanted a lavish wedding instead of a sensible one. I vividly recall the night my parents told me they were going to take out a loan for her wedding, even though it was much beyond our family's resources. This is ridiculous, parents. Sitting at our kitchen table, I remarked, if Sarah wants such a lavish wedding, why is she unable to take out the financing herself? When I asked any inquiry regarding Sarah, Mom's face tensed up as usual. Your sister's credit history has some problems. She is not now eligible for a loan from the banks. Then perhaps a modest wedding would be more appropriate for her. I proposed, already aware of the solution. Keep your mouth shut, Chloe. Mom lost her temper. This relates to the special day of your sister. Avoid becoming self-centered. When I attempted to be the voice of reason, they invariably used that term. Selfish. Dad simply sat there, nodding in agreement with Mom, as he always did with Sarah. At the time, I was aware of how everything would unfold, but I was unaware of how dire things would get. In retrospect, I see that my weekend visitation schedule was more about attempting to mend Sarah's broken things than it was about being a good daughter. I traveled to their house every 2 weeks, pack up a few tiny gifts, and act like nothing happened. Act as though I didn't hate being the sole provider for our family. However, everything changed last Friday. With arms full of the customary considerate small gifts, I drew up to their house as they usually did. I took it up. My entire life changed the instant I stepped through that door. As if she and Sarah had never left, they are seated in our living room. She wasn't by herself either. At her feet were 2 little children I had never met. I felt as though I had been physically struck by their sight. My sister, who vanished from our life without a trace, banned me on all social media, and disregarded all of my emails regarding the debt. As if nothing had ever occurred, she was only sitting there. As if she were the prodigal daughter who had returned from war, rather than someone who had left them to face financial ruin. Our parents were beaming at her. Hey, Chloe. Sarah spoke informally, as though we had met the day before. Then she said, Mom, I'm starving, as she turned to face the kitchen. Has my favorite meal been prepared yet? As I saw my parents' features brighten at Sarah's demanding tone, I stood in the doorway with gifts that were becoming heavy in my arms. It seems that although some things would never change, others will soon in ways that none of us could have foreseen. That night's dinner felt unreal. My little present set was left on the side table as Mom rushed around the kitchen making Sarah's favorite meals. As he observed his grandkids, Dad couldn't help but smile. Playing in the living room, I suppose, are my niece and nephew. Although they were adorable children, ages 3 and 5, I couldn't help but feel resentful that I had never heard of them before. As we sat around the dining table, I at last broke the awkward stillness. "Why did you choose to return, Sarah?" She shoved another forkful of food into her lips and shrugged. "All I did was miss Mom and Dad." She spoke in an informal tone, as though she hadn't abandoned us all 5 years prior. I inhaled deeply while attempting to maintain a steady voice. "Does this imply that you will at last contribute to repaying the debt they obtained for your wedding?" The room's temperature appeared to drop by 10 degrees. Sarah's cheeks reddened with rage, but her mother interrupted her before she could reply. "This isn't the time to discuss money, Chloe," she reprimanded. "Isn't it wonderful that the family is back together at last?" I felt like screaming. The family has reunited. The last 5 years when I was the only one keeping them afloat. What about that? They were struggling to make ends meet after paying off Sarah's wedding loan. So I had been sending them $1.500 per month to cover groceries and expenses. Yes, but let's avoid discussing money. Like I was invisible, the remainder of the weekend went by. Sarah and the children received all of the attention from their parents. Before departing on Sunday, I could as well have been a piece of furniture. In the kitchen, I found Sarah by herself. "For what duration do you intend to remain?" I tried to sound informal as I inquired. "Oh, not long," she remarked, dismissively waving her hand. "Back home, Mark is waiting for me." Mark, we simply needed a brief getaway. Her wealthy husband allegedly maintained such tight control over all of their money that she was unable to assist in repaying the debt her own parents had obtained for her wedding. These were the same parents who were now behaving as though she were a hero who had returned. Mom sent me a text that night while I was driving back to my apartment. Sarah emailed us photos of her stunning home. "Take a look at their kitchen. It is beautiful." I tightened my hold on the steering wheel, resisting the want to respond with my true thoughts. Perhaps she might reimburse you for her wedding by selling that lovely home. However, I said nothing. I never spoke. Mom would get a deluge of calls over the course of the following 2 weeks, all of them raving about Sarah, her home, her clothes, and her kids. Every discussion made my stomach turn like a dagger. I, the one who had been helping them for years, hardly received a mention, while the daughter who had abandoned them was suddenly the focus of every narrative. Something seemed strange even before I opened the door when I got to my folks' place the next weekend. Mom and Dad didn't come to welcome me as they usually do, but their automobiles were in the driveway. Rather, I discovered them seated in the living room, appearing distressed. "What's the matter?" I put down my handbag and asked, "Has something taken place?" Mom hardly gave me a glance. "Soon, Sarah and the children will arrive. They will be here for a few days. We must get the house ready." I made an effort to inhale deeply. "All well, but don't go near my room. When I come, I need a place to stay." I turned to face my mother. "Don't give away my room, you swear?" "Certainly not, my dear." Mom crossed her heart as she said, "I swear." The next 2 months were filled with work and went by quickly. My manager praised me for landing a huge project that required all of my attention, but it left little time for family visits. My conversations with Mom were more distant and shorter. I eventually discovered the true meaning of her hectic schedule. I ultimately made the decision to surprise my parents with a lengthy visit after finishing the assignment successfully and earning a big bonus. I overspent on presents, getting Dad a high-end tool set and Mom a fancy coffee maker. In fact, I was eager to see them after being away for 2 months. I could see there was a serious problem as soon as I came through the door on Friday night. Sarah's children's toys were all over the place. When Mom saw me, her face became white. "What are you doing here, Chloe?" I was hit hard by the question. As I had done for the previous 5 years, I came to visit. "Oh," Mom said with an uneasy expression. "We didn't anticipate you." When I gave our parents the presents, Sarah came out of the kitchen grinning. She was always trying to brag, so she rolled her eyes. "Are you not Chloe?" I replied sharply. "When are you going back home?" Ignoring her, Sarah grinned more broadly. "I'm not. I have a divorce from Mark. Now this is home." I almost let the coffee maker slide out of my hands. Separated. She was moving back in with our parents, who hadn't even paid for her wedding yet. After the ostensibly ideal marriage that had warranted all those debts and sacrifices was done. However, the worst was still to come. I started to go to my room after supper, but my mother's anxious voice interrupted me. "What about your room, honey?" Sarah received it, and we converted her former room into a nursery for the children. It seemed like the world was tilting on its axis. "You made a pledge," I muttered. "You said that you would not enter my room. Dad, stop being so theatrical. Cut in. For you, we emptied the storage closet. Add a bed and other furnishings. A closet. To accommodate the daughter who had deserted them, they had relocated me to a closet. They were still paying off the sum owed to the daughter. In order to support a closet, I had been helping them." I sounded weirdly composed. "After 5 years of helping you pay your expenses, you're putting me in a closet." I looked at my sister. "How about the job? What role do you intend to play in the home?" Sarah sat on what had been my bed and looked at her manicure. "I'm not required to work. Mark provides me and the children with adequate alimony. What about the costs for mom and dad?" For 3 more persons, I hit the utilities button. The grocery. The loan. "The payments for your wedding are still being made. Covering that doesn't bother mom and dad." Sarah gave a shrug. "Correct." As if they were bobbleheads on a dashboard, our parents nodded rapidly. Observing them made me feel ill. I've been providing them $1,500 a month, so they don't mind. I clenched my teeth and said, "Money that seems to have been helping you. Now let's." Dad's expression grew glum. "That's sufficient. Chloe, you're being conceited and self-centered. For your visits, the closet is ideal." "Selfish?" I gave a sour laugh. "Sending you money each month when she does not is selfish of me." I gestured to Sarah. "After defrauding you of her wedding debt, she vanished for 5 years." Mom said, "We're sick of your outbursts. Perhaps you should leave if you are unable to accept this circumstance." The final straw was Sarah's arrogant smirk. Something inside of me eventually shattered without further word as I stared at their faces, my sister's entitled delight, my mother's dismissive fury, and my father's severe condemnation. I turned around and left. Out of their life, not merely out of the home or the room. They made no attempt to stop me. When I got back to my flat, I opened my banking app and a bottle of wine. Staring back at me was the $1,500 monthly deposit to my parents' account, which was due in 3 days. I drew my finger over the cancel button. I have been the one in charge all these years. The good daughter. The person who offered assistance without grumbling. What had I gained from it? A family that favored the daughter who had deserted them, and a closet to sleep in. As I took another drink of wine, I reflected on all the occasions I had been my tongue and the money I had spent while Sarah was living in her lovely home and flaunting her ideal life on social media. Every instance in which my parents disregarded my worries and gave in to her demands. The decision seemed obvious. I tapped firmly to stop the automatic transfer. Now let Sarah assist them. Leave the grocery shopping and utility bills to her. Allow her to confront the fact that she owed our parents money. Being the family ATM was over for me. A month went by in utter quiet. Mom didn't call to inquire about Sarah's most recent purchases. No notes regarding the adorable antics of the grandchildren. Nothing. I tried to ignore the emptiness in my chest by throwing myself into my job, but I was unable to fully detach. Social media turned into a window that allowed me to see exactly where I stood in their universe. Mom has a ton of pictures on her Facebook page. Sarah and Mom preparing cookies. Sarah and Dad at the park with the kids. My darling daughter and her lovely kids. Joyful family times without me in them. Even though every post was like a knife twist, I couldn't take my eyes off of them. I needed to be reminded of the reasons for my choice. Then the phone rang. I had anticipated it. "Why is the money still not here?" Without even saying hi, Mom made a demand. Her tone was abrasive and accusing. I spoke steadily. The transfers were canceled by me. The other end was silent for a very long time. I believed she had hung up. "Then you weren't." Again, I canceled them. "I will no longer be of assistance." "That is not possible." A cry froze Mom's voice. "That money is necessary. What made you so self-centered?" The old charge nearly made me giggle. Selfish? It's been 5 years since I started helping you. Sarah shared photos of her shopping trips when she was living in her opulent home. Now let her assist you. She needs to look after her kids. Anger trembled in Mom's voice. "You're a little ungrateful. Following everything that we have done for you. Done for me." I did laugh now, for example, putting me in a closet or taking out a debt that you're still repaying for Sarah's wedding. Or perhaps you're referring to the 5 years of ignoring me, unless you were in need of cash. Mom spat. You're just envious of your sister. You were and always were. You're being unkind. I then hung up. I wasn't feeling guilty, but my hands were shaking. I felt in control for the first time in years. Almost instantly, the SMS messages began. Sarah was the first. You're jealous. You've always detested the fact that my parents loved me more. You're simply cruel and resentful. Without replying, I removed it. Dad had a shorter message. You are the reason your mother is sobbing. I hope all is well with you. The word wasn't happy, perhaps exhausted. I'm sick of being the family's fallback. Sarah, I'm sick of seeing them prioritize. Regardless of how many times she failed them, there were more messages. They were all more irate or desperate than the previous. Despite reading them all, I didn't reply to any of them. Give them a taste of what it was like to be disregarded for once. My phone rang once again a week later. Mom's phone number. Her voice said, "Hello, sweetheart. Sweetheart, honey, you are missed." "Will you not pay us a visit within the closet?" Dryly, I asked. She trailed off uncertainly. "We could make up the couch." "Thank you, but no. Chloe, please." Her tone shifted to one of desperation. "Without your assistance, we're having trouble. I no longer have to deal with the mounting costs." I interrupted her. "When you ejected me from my room for Sarah once more, you made this decision." Mom burst into tears on the phone. I had heard those deceptive sobs so many times before when she demanded things. "Chloe, you're being so mean. We are your parents. We require assistance with the bills, the loan installments, the wedding loan payments for Sarah." I reminded her of the wedding she never helped pay for and saddled you with. How about asking her for assistance? She needs to provide for her kids. Mark's alimony made Mom's voice harsh once again. I responded with the alimony she boasts about but won't tell you about. "Come on, Mom. You're allowing her to take advantage of you once more. That is untrue. She's evolved. She couldn't see me, but I shook my head. I have, but she hasn't." I hung up once more. This time, their numbers are being blocked. I had had enough of guilt trips. The manipulation and being treated like an unwelcome house guest, despite providing financial support for the family, are over. I turned on my laptop and began looking at housing choices that evening. I could afford a good down payment on my own home with the money I'd been paying my folks every month. Instead of supporting their bad decisions, it was time to invest in my future. Sarah managed to reach me on a new phone a week later. She remarked in an accusatory tone, "You're killing them, you know. These days they can hardly afford groceries. It's funny that when you saddled them with your wedding loan, you didn't care about it," I answered. "Or the 5 years you were absent. That was not the same." She almost yelled. "Mark and I had issues. You also have alimony now." I interrupted her. "Make use of it to assist them. That's for my children and me. They also have money for you and your children, don't they? Similar to my room in their home." Even I was astonished by the vitriol in my voice. "Sarah, do you know what's killing them? Yes, you are. You were and always were. You simply never had to deal with it, considering that I was clearing your trash. The fact that others love me more makes you envious." She spat. My laughter was real. "You're correct. Yes, they do love you more. They've always done so, and they will, always. However, love doesn't cover expenses, does it? That was my responsibility. And I gave up. In order to give her time to learn how to sustain herself, I ended the call and blocked her new number. Let her experience what it's like to be an adult for once." That afternoon, I received a call from my real estate agent. I arranged for a showing, and she had discovered the ideal condo that fit my budget. I became aware that I was lighter than I had been in years. The weight of the demands, expectations, and unending partiality from my family. Everything was vanishing. I no longer had to take responsibility for fixing things. I was no longer the second-best daughter, forced to take whatever meager attention they felt was appropriate. I was only Chloe. And that felt like enough for the first time in my life. Even if you're not speaking to them directly, word gets around quickly in families. One evening, I received a reluctant call from my cousin Emma. She said, "I thought you should know. Your mother has been accusing everyone of abandoning them and accusing them of punishing them for assisting Sarah during her difficult period." I gave a snort. "Is that the current term for it? Assisting Sarah?" Emma went on. They're working double shifts. Your father is worn out. Sarah is still unemployed. She only uses her alimony for shopping and upscale lunches with the kids and friends. Emma let out a sigh. While Sarah is out, your parents are essentially raising them. She claims that she is recovering from her trauma. The same Sarah. Another justification. What's humorous, do you? Gazing out the window of my apartment, I murmured. I sent them money each month for 5 years. Twice a month. I went there. Every birthday and every holiday, I was present. But the time. Sarah stopped talking. I was disposable. I was actually placed in a closet. Emma, I understand, she answered quietly. It is incorrect. No, it's not, but I no longer have an issue with it. I hung up and took another look at the condo. It was flawless. A contemporary kitchen and 2 bedrooms. It was also, and above all, mine. No guilt trips, no family strife, and no being moved into a closet to make way for another person. Later that night, I made an offer. Using Dad's work phone, Mom managed to reach me the following day. All the extra shifts are making your father's back worse, she remarked, not bothering to say hello. Chloe, we truly need your assistance. How about Sarah's assistance? Is she still going shopping while you two are working yourselves to death? I inquired. You know, Mom, the answer was silent enough. I just made an offer on a condo, I went on. I'm using the money I sent you to cover the down payment. You treated me like an intruder and used the money to support Sarah and her children. How could you be so callous? Mom's voice broke. Are we your parents? You are, indeed. Sarah is also my sister. However, I'm tired of being the family bank while you disregard me. Mom objected. You matter, of course. You are loved by us. No, Mother, you adore what I am capable of doing for you. There is a distinction. Although I could hear her beginning to cry once more, I was unaffected. I was no longer susceptible to manipulation. I must leave. I said that my real estate agent and I were meeting. She pleaded, Chloe, please, we can figure something out. When you come over, we can set up a real bed in the living room. Mom, goodbye. My phone rang with a message from my agent as I hung up. My offer had been approved by the sellers. I was going to own my own house. As I surveyed my flat, I reflected on all the weekends I had missed since I was at my parents' place. I was always providing for them, therefore I didn't save any money. As a backup plan, I would put my life on hold. With regard to my new condo's balcony, time has a way of putting things into perspective. If I were still paying money to sustain Sarah's lifestyle, I would never be able to see the city skyline. I'm investing in my own future for the first time in my adult life, and the mortgage payments are doable, rather than covering my sister's previous expenses. Even though I never ask, Emma keeps me informed on the family situation. Sarah continues to live with our parents, spending her alimony on upscale clothing and spa treatments, while occasionally allocating leftover funds to her children's bills. Both parents are putting in extra hours at their careers. The burden of caring for 3 more people, far into what should have been their simpler years, is evident on their face. At last, they settled Sarah's wedding debt. This whole thing began with the debt. The irony that they paid for a marriage that didn't even last isn't lost on me. After telling Aunt Julie that they could now breathe better, I overheard Mom complaining about their ungrateful younger daughter leaving them when they needed her most. During our most recent phone conversation, Emma informed me that your mom was showing everyone photos of Sarah and the children over Sunday dinner. At least one of her daughters still cares about family, she insisted. I simply grinned. How kind of her. Do you not want to share your new location with them? Emma inquired. Prove to them that you are currently doing well. I gave a forceful response. They are not allowed to participate in this. They attempted to put me in a closet, so they can't see what I made for myself. I intend to continue not disclosing my new address to anyone. I can only image how they would respond. Mom's hardly disguised judgment that I must believe I'm superior to everyone else at this point. Sarah's envious remarks about my ostentation, and Dad's disapproving scowl. They would find a way to turn my success into a personal attack, arguing that I ought to be helping my family rather than living in a fancy home. However, I no longer give a damn. Let them speak. Let them gripe to family members about their egotistical, nasty daughter who wouldn't continue to support their bad decisions. Allow them to work those additional hours while Sarah spends her time lounging about their home and flawlessly portraying the character of a destitute divorced mother. They attempted to relocate me into the storage closet, And sometimes I think about it while enjoying a glass of wine on my balcony and watching the city sunset. Really, that was their last present to me. I gave them everything I had, but I needed the push to break away and stop taking bits and pieces of their attention.